Okay, I think we should be back now, folks. Dude, I have no idea. Why? Why my thing randomly just decided to go off and just no longer be live? But I should be back now. Am I back on Rumble? Okay, there, I'm back on Rumble now. Okay, there. Dude, I have no idea, man. I have no idea. That's so crazy. I'm streaming, I'm talking here, and then I noticed my thing blinked over there. And I was like, okay, well, hopefully that's nothing. And then nope, I'm just no longer live. So I don't know how much of what I was saying there you guys caught at the end. That is so very annoying. I hate that so much. No, Alan, it's not my internet. I guarantee you. I'll show you a speed test right now. It is not my internet. My internet is very, very good. And in fact, we upgraded the internet just to make sure that these things didn't happen. We upgraded it. So it is there. And we've had times where my internet has gone out. We've had times. This is not then, because if my internet goes out, it would show a thing at the bottom here. It would show a thing on my internet. It would say it's not out. It would say it was out. It would say I do not have a connection. That's not what's happening right now. That's not what's happening right now. So yeah, I don't know, man. I really have no idea. I might switch my encoder. I really might, because it does this thing so randomly. Well, if you guys are watching this later on, you just had to switch parts. Sorry about that. If you are watching us on Rumble, actually, you'll probably just notice a black screen for a minute, and then it'll be right back in, because Rumble actually lets me continue, unlike YouTube automatically ending. So if you guys are just tuning in, we were just talking about Elon Musk, Corinne Jean-Pierre, and all the madness that was going down with her saying, Rebecca says Chandler got yayed. And see, here's my chat from the last stream, because most of it is still carrying over because I didn't restart my thing. It just decided to die, apparently. Anyways, they're deciding that they're going to be keeping an eye on Twitter. And here is a bit more. Obviously, Corinne Jean-Pierre got some backlash for basically announcing that they're going to be investigating or monitoring what's going on with Twitter. And that's got to be something that has at least a little bit of concern to it, right? White House Press Secretary Corinne Jean-Pierre faced new criticism Monday for saying that the Biden admin is keeping a close eye on Elon Musk's newly acquired Twitter over concerns about the spread of misinformation and incitement to violence. Her comments at a press briefing were sparked by a question from Reuters' Andrew Shalal, who asked about Twitter becoming a vector of misinformation. Shalal wondered what tools the administration has and who at the White House is monitoring Twitter. This is something that we're currently keeping an eye on. Look, we have always been very clear that when it comes to social media platforms, it is their responsibility to make sure that when it comes to misinformation and when it comes to hate that we're seeing, they take action, yada, yada. We're all monitoring what's currently occurring. We see it with our eyes of what you all are reporting and what is happening on Twitter. But again, social media companies have a responsibility, yada, yada, all that. Social media users quickly zeroed in on the press secretary ominous statements about the administration keeping a close eye on Twitter. Brian Dean Wright, a conservative commentator and former CIA officer, tweeted, "These are the words of a regime, not a republic." The House Judiciary GOP tweeted, "Why is the Biden White House scared of the First Amendment and Elon Musk?" Ilya Shapiro, director of constitutional studies at the Manhattan Institute, said Jean-Pierre's comments likely violated the Bill of Rights. The statement sounded as ominous and is likely a First Amendment violation in and of itself. James Hearson, a New York Times bestselling author and attorney, encouraged the Biden admin to keep an eye on the border instead of Musk's social. Ooh, dang, that's a hot one right there. Why didn't I think of that? That is a hot one right there. Hot one right there. Keep an eye on the border, man. We've talked about the border. I've shown you guys heartbreaking video of kids that were, coyoted and trafficked across. Some people that drowned trying to swim across. At some places where there's a river. I don't know, guys. I don't know. Such insane things. Tim Young, a conservative author and comedian, tweeted, "The White House hates free speech." Brett Weinstein, an evolutionary biologist who rose to prominence in 2017 after he refused to take place in the day of absence for white people out of college, suggested that the Biden admin's overstepped its authority by attempting to censor political speech on a private platform. The strongest argument against free speech on Twitter has two parts. It's private and so not bound by 1A. There is a higher standard that could limit the downside of free speech on Twitter. It fails when the executive branch takes an interest. 1A now applies directly. That is an ominous statement that they're going to be keeping an eye on what? What are you going to be keeping an eye on, Twitter? That's the question that many people are asking and are so very confused by. So there's the tweet from Elon. Apple has threatened to withhold Twitter from its app store, but won't tell us why, etc. Man, this is so disappointing. YouTube, my streaming software, killed my last stream. And now I'm on this new stream here on YouTube, and I don't think any of the people from my last stream have carried over. Because it looks like it's just a completely and entirely separate thing now. Which is a shame. It's just a shame, because we had a good group of people in the building, and then it's just gone. That's a shame, but thank you guys for being here, obviously. We've got more to jump into. Ron DeSantis actually decided to weigh in. Very interesting thing of him to weigh in on right about this time when there's a lot of talk and chitter-chatter about him running for president, perhaps, and obviously this is kind of an interesting time for him to be speaking when the campaign season is already over. He already won. So Ron DeSantis says Apple removing Elon Musk's Twitter from App Store warrants a congressional response. That would be a huge mistake, and it would be a really raw exercise of monopolistic power that I think would merit a response from Congress.
Reports that Apple is threatening to remove Twitter from the App Store because Elon Musk is actually opening it up for free speech and is restoring a lot of accounts that were unfairly and illegitimately suspended for putting out accurate information about COVID. That's like one of the main things that's being reinstated. So many things these experts were wrong at, and you had people on Twitter that were calling that out. And Twitter, the old regime in Twitter, their response was to try to just suffocate the dissent. And Elon Musk knows that's not a winning formula, and so he's providing free speech. And so if Apple responds to that by nuking them from the App Store, I think that would be a huge mistake, and it would be a really raw exercise of monopolistic power that I think would merit a response from the United States Congress. And so don't be a vassal of the CCP on one hand and then use your corporate power in the United States on the other to suffocate Americans and try to suppress their right to express themselves.
I'm snapping my fingers. I don't know if you guys can... Yeah, my mic doesn't pick it up. I have it limited, but wow. I'm snapping my fingers right there. That was art. That was poetry. Truly was. Verbal poetry. Hey, primary season would be interesting if DeSantis were in. I'm not all in on the Trump train. I'm not all in on the DeSantis train. I'm not all in on the Ye train. I am completely just keeping an eye on things. So far, Trump is the only person that has announced a campaign and is running a campaign that has any papers filed and is doing more than just various stunts. But that's not to say the Ye campaign can't eventually get serious. I mean, it's got, real political operatives involved in it. So, hey, keep an eye on things. But that right there is why a lot of people, and I understand it, that is why a lot of people like Ron DeSantis. And I'd say it's a good thing for him. He's probably, he might be a better speaker, or at least on par with Trump, which is why a debate between them would be so very entertaining. So very entertaining. Now, I don't think Ron DeSantis is as personable or as funny as Trump. I mean, Trump came up, I know, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but every time I hear Ron DeSanctimonious, it's not even like in the top 5 or top 10 of his nicknames, but and I imagine it in the most Trumpy voice ever, and I have a terrible Trump impression, but I'm going to do it anyways just for you guys. Ron DeSanctimonious. Good old Ron DeSanctimonious. I have a terrible Trump impression. It sounds more like Fauci, but every time I hear it, I just imagine it in that voice, and it makes me laugh. It's so funny. So I'd say a campaign between them would be hilarious, very hilarious, and very, very entertaining. But now it's time to move on to something that is not as hilarious and definitely not entertaining, but it's very scary. And I hope that either one of those candidates that we just mentioned would do everything in their power to stand for these people. 2 Oath Keepers, including the founder, have been convicted of seditious conspiracy in the January 6th case. Seditious conspiracy. Now, I'm saying this twice for emphasis because I really want to hammer into the point how record-breaking and insane this is. There has never in American history, not even dating all the way back to the foundation of this country in the 1700s, has somebody been convicted of seditious conspiracy. And I'll confirm this because I read this on Twitter, but I want to make absolute sure. Seditious conspiracy. See if I can find it on Wikipedia. And I close that. Form of sedition has been described as a serious but lesser counterpart to treason, targeting activities that undermine the state without directly attacking it. Common law, yada yada. So far-right groups, seditious conspiracy cases have been brought several times, for the most part unsuccessfully, against far-right groups, including nationalists, followers of the Patriot movement, yada yada, illegitimate, Christian Front, yada yada. 9 members were charged. They were all acquitted due to the prosecution's over-reliance on circumstantial evidence. The DOJ attempted to get somebody from there, but they were all acquitted. However, now things have changed. As for the first time, and it says acquit. Everybody's been acquitted in all this. I'm sure if there was another one, I might have already read about it, and I might be wrong, but I'm quite sure for the first time, seditious conspiracy, somebody's been charged and convicted of it. Wow. A federal jury in Washington on Tuesday found Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes and Kelly Meggs, another member of the far-right organization, guilty of seditious conspiracy in connection with the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, a victory for the government in a case that involved a rarely used Civil War-era statute. 3 other members of the group who were on trial alongside Rhodes and Meggs, Jessica Watkins, Kenneth Harrelson, and Thomas Caldwell, were found not guilty on the seditious conspiracy charges. All 5 defendants were found guilty of obstruction of an official proceeding and aiding and abetting for their actions on January 6th, which means they are all going to prison. The seditious conspiracy charge carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. Rhodes' lawyer said Tuesday that he plans to appeal that conviction. The seditious conspiracy case is the most serious to grow out of the Justice Department's sprawling investigation into the Capitol attack. The 2 seditious conspiracy verdicts were wins for the department, which has brought forward the relatively rare charges against a member of Oath Keepers, as well as members of the far-right Proud Boys. The not guilty verdicts for 3 other defendants could be seen as a sign that jurors did not think the Justice Department proved that Harrelson, Watkins, and others had planned ahead of time to storm the Capitol. Some of the most violent rhetoric presented by the government during the nearly 2-month trial came from the 2 defendants who were found guilty of seditious conspiracy, Rhodes and Meggs. In evidence presented by the government, both men show particular disdain for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and talked about their desire to do her violence, which, when you're on trial is not going to win you any favors. All 3 defendants who physically went inside the Capitol on January 6th were found guilty of conspiracy to prevent an officer from discharging their official duties, and Rhodes and Caldwell were on Capitol grounds that day, but did not go inside the building. So, various levels of it. At least they aren't throwing them all in prison and throwing away the key. Except I think that is exactly what they're doing. So, I don't know. There's not really many benefits or good sides I can see to this entire story. There are none. These are people that decided to protest and felt like they were fighting for their country, doing something good, and are now going to be paying the price for it. Meanwhile, almost every single person on the left that does pretty much anything out of left field that might infringe upon the law, walk free. Who was on Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs? What happened to those various shooters? Why have they disappeared from the news cycle now that it was found that they were non-binary? What about the first son of the United States? What about the people that, what was it? I think it was June 19th, 2020. I might have that a little off, but June of 2020, when they were storming in DC, did they storm the White House, forcing Trump to retreat to the presidential bunker? Where is the equivalence of law? I thought law was supposed to be blind. It's the scale and sword and the blindfold. That was the point. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, gay, straight, Republican, Democrat, Proud Boy or Antifa, Oath Keeper or Patriot Front. I'm calling Patriot Front a left-wing thing because that's government. That's a CIA thing. But either way, it doesn't matter if you're any of these groups. If you break the law, and bar you being a CIA informant like Patriot Front, you probably should go to prison for an equivalent crime. So I'm not necessarily decrying this. I'm just saying if we're going to do this, keep the same energy for those wackos that burned buildings, for those whackers that shot and killed David Dorn and everybody else. Because those wackos deserve justice. Justice. Swift justice, too. Not 2 years later, like Jussie Smollett. 3 years, pretty much. But swift justice. And that would be an actual benefit, because a lot of these January 6 prisoners, I want them to have swift justice, so that they can either be acquitted or begin serving actual time and then eventually get out. Some of them are still sitting in jail in DC and various other places, Maryland, whatever it may be, without trial, without representation, some of them without even seeing the light of day. Some of them sitting in solitary confinement for dozens of hours a day. And we call this humane treatment. We call this America. This is the stuff we're seeing out of China. You guys do know what's happening in China, right? With the protests against the COVID lockdowns they're having over there. People are being forced into their apartments. The Doors are being barricaded. They're flying drones saying, do not leave your homes or you will be shot and killed. Some of these places, they've been stuck in them for so long, they're starting to light on fire. Like these buildings are catching fire. And because of the barricades and the police holding these people in their homes, they were not able to escape when these fires happened. And fire teams were not able to get in there to quell the fires. People died. That is what you expect from China. And you can say, oh, that's human rights violations. That's disgusting. That's China. Something quite similar is happening here in America.